abortion doesn't just stop at abortion. It leads directly into euthanasia. If being a burden inside the womb warrants death for you, then being a burden outside the womb warrants death too as the next logical step. Already in Canada, over 4% of all deaths just last year, representing 13,000 people, as newly released data shows, were legally killed by doctors through euthanasia programs. That is insane. And over in the UK, even if you don't want euthanasia, they will force it on you or on your child if the local death panel, or I guess I mean the court system, thinks it's in your best interest. It's in your best interest to just die. Orwellian, huh? But thankfully, some are fighting back. The Italian government held an emergency meeting on Monday to grant Italian citizenship to little 8-month-old baby Indy Gregory from England, and to cover the cost of her medical treatment, of which the Vatican's pediatric hospital is willing to provide, as she remains on a ventilator for her rare degenerative mitochondrial disease. England's High Court ruled to take the poor child off the ventilator, to kill her, in other words, against her parents' wishes, instead of letting nature take its course, so that they can free up resources for other patients. And now the courts are trying to block the parents from flying their baby to Italy, hence why the Italian government's doing its part. And for the first time, the British Court of Appeal refused to hear the parents' appeal without any hearing, just a rubber stamp denial. Again, doesn't this remind you of those feminists I was talking about earlier? How even the ones who can't get pregnant still fight so hard for abortion, for the symbolism of it. Same thing here. If England doesn't want to pay for this baby, then why not be happy that someone else's government's willing to? Unless the symbolism of it would be too much for them to bear. Because what if this little girl goes on to get better? How would that make the UK's view of human life look? Pretty sick and twisted, right? That they want to get rid of her to free up resources, as they put it so nastily. So they have to make sure that she dies, now that they're this far into the legal fight. Joining us now to discuss all this and more is military defense attorney Davis Younts. Davis, thanks for being here tonight.
Hey, good evening.
Great. So I started off talking about Ohio, and right there we just saw Ohio voters want us to believe that abortion is some God-given right to be enshrined into their state constitution, and it was celebrated, I'm sure you saw, by tears of joy streaming down their faces of all those who voted in favor, jumping up and down. It was disgusting. And we see these sick celebrations every time abortion access passes. I mean, what do you make of the macabre spectacle?
It's really hard to understand unless we are willing to engage in a discussion of religious faith and worldview. You said it really well in the monologue. This is a question of, are we going to worship God or worship man? And when we choose to ignore God, ignore Creator God, and begin to worship man, not only do we begin to belittle and just disregard human life that we decide not to care about, we elevate issues like this and we become fascinated with it, and it does become a pagan ritual. It becomes what we have seen throughout human history. When God is rejected, ultimately people begin to worship man, and it leads to human sacrifice. This is the level of zealotry we see on these issues. What we need to be talking about is life, the preservation of all life, respect for all life, and equal protection at all stages of human life, from fertilization to natural death. That's what we should be focusing on. When we abandon that, this is what we get, and it is deeply concerning because it has so many religious overtones.
That it doesn't. Ohio seen as being more of a red state. Same thing with Kentucky, and yet we saw big losses in both yesterday, last night. So now you're seeing a lot of Republican strategists, and they're coming out and they're saying abortion is a losing issue. They'll tell us that ever since Roe's overturning last year by the Supreme Court, that in all the elections since, abortion's been a losing issue. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that, but that is what we're hearing from a lot of these Republican strategists. So what they're now recommending is that we basically pull back on it. And I saw some joking online when I asked a poll question about it. They were saying, pull back on abortion messaging. Have Republicans ever been that strong on it in the first place? Which I thought was funny, because it's definitely true. But what do you make of some of these strategists saying, well, basically let's admit defeat, I guess, in the face of a horrible paganistic, demonic type culture, and let's just get rid of the abortion issue, or let's not talk about it, or let's play footsies with the left? I mean, what do you make of some of those recommendations we've been hearing?
Well, they bother me on two levels. So first is just, let's talk about the political strategy. If you are trying to win on an issue, but all you're doing is compromising, where the other side has a religious fervor in their zealotry for it, you are always going to lose. So if what you are starting from is a position of exception and compromise, I believe you're going to lose politically.